These are mistakes that cost NFL players millions. And first up, we have Chris Jones, who was one sack away from earning an extra $1.25 million this season. Dang, that would have been the most expensive sack in NFL history. However, while not reaching this 10-sack incentive was downright devastating, Jones still found a way to get the last laugh after the Chiefs beat the Broncos in their season finale. Meanwhile, this next mistake left Antonio Brown with anything but laughs. Because following an outburst against the Jets in Week 17, Brown was released from the Buccaneers before hitting 3 incentives, each worth over $300,000. The incentives weren't out of reach either, as Brown only needed 8 more receptions, 55 more receiving yards, and 1 more touchdown to hit all of these bonuses. But Brown's temper tantrum literally cost him $1 million. Yikes. But both of these mistakes are tiny compared to Patrick Willis's mistake after his retirement in 2015. Let's just say it's hard not to feel bad for Willis after hearing about this mistake. With Willis seemingly in the clear financially, he decided to take a big risk by going into business at a tech startup in Silicon Valley, with a push from his business partner Aaron Niazi. Unfortunately, the opportunity turned out too good to be true. Instead of making lots of money, Willis lost all of the money he invested into the company. That's because his business partner scammed Willis and had control over funds Willis raised for the company without his knowledge or consent. Hopefully, Willis will be more careful the next time he invests that much money. That mistake must have been a tough pill to swallow. Thankfully, Willis has gotten back on his feet. However, the same can't be said for Johnny Unitas. While Unitas is remembered as an all-time great football player, he wasn't as successful with his money. Unitas did everything from dabbling in real estate to owning a bowling alley, and even trying out broadcasting after his football career. But in 1984, Unitas took his job experimentation too far by purchasing a circuit board company. What initially seemed like a no-brainer eventually turned into a terrible thing to buy, because just a few years later, Unitas was forced to sell the company and declare bankruptcy after owing over $300 million. Damn, my man didn't know when to quit. Similarly, Terrell Owens blew his football savings of around $80 million. But before we dive into how things went south for the diva receiver, let's talk about another diva receiver, Odell Beckham. Even though OBJ has made his fair share of nifty transactions, like purchasing a CryptoPunk, his risk-taking nature came back to bite him. After settling for a $750,000 contract with the Rams this past season, Beckham took his entire salary in the form of Bitcoin, which is just asking for trouble. And OBJ thought this was a smart idea, until Bitcoin stock prices plummeted since the signing. In less than a year, Bitcoin has almost been cut in half in value. But to make matters worse, Beckham still had to pay taxes on his salary, which basically took the rest of OBJ's salary away. So instead of looking like a genius, Beckham found himself with only a mere $35,000 remaining. Yikes! But $35,000 is still more than what Le'Veon Bell made in 2018. Because after being offered almost $15 million to play on the franchise tag, Bell decided he wanted no part of a short-term deal. Instead of resolving the issue, Bell took the entire season off in hopes of securing more long-term money. However, instead of riding into the sunset with the Steelers, Bell settled for a far inferior contract on a pretty bad team, Jets. Although Bell still secured a 4-year, $52 million contract, it's hard not to imagine what could have been. Because according to rumors, the Steelers offered Bell a $5 million extension, worth $70 million before his holdout. That's practically unheard of for running backs. Then it's not just the money Bell missed out on, because before his holdout, Bell was thriving in Pittsburgh. And not to mention it, Bell hasn't lasted 2 years with a team since. One can only wonder what staying in Pittsburgh and not taking a year off would have meant for his football career. Fortunately, no one has to wonder what could have been with Terrell Owens, because unlike Bell, Owens never took a year off in his Hall of Fame 15-year career. Yet that doesn't mean Owens was in the clear financially. because Owens also made his fair share of mistakes. Owens fell into a common trap with his seemingly endless supply of money by believing that his money would never run out. Boy, was Owens wrong. Owens' money quickly disappeared after he spent millions on houses, condos, cars, and jewelry. Although Owens intended to rent out his houses if they became too expensive, his backup plan failed miserably when the housing market crashed. This left Terrell Owens with one last plan to prevent himself from becoming another riches-to-rags victim, turning his money over to strangers. But as expected, Owens' last-ditch effort failed after strangers gambled away his money on high-risk investments. Just like that, Owens lost his entire career earnings of over $80 million. Damn, man, I would have imagined that better than you. But believe it or not, Owens isn't the only Hall of Famer to make poor decisions with their money, because Dan Marino also made a financially life-changing mistake. But his mistake will have to wait until later, because Ricky Williams signed the worst contract in NFL history. Coming into the NFL, Ricky Williams had all the confidence in the world. That's because, in college, Williams was practically unstoppable. Although Williams' confidence turned into overconfidence when he signed his rookie contract in 1999. In fact, Williams was so confident in his abilities that his rookie contract included around $60 million worth of incentives. At first glance, this seems like a clever move. However, the incentives significantly took away from his base pay, which ended up being the league minimum of around $200,000. That's straight up embarrassing. But as long as Williams hit his incentives, this would have been a smart contract, right? Wrong. As it turns out, the majority of Williams' incentives were so unreachable that even the greatest running backs of all time didn't accomplish them. From MVP Rookie of the Year to Super Bowl MVP, the incentives were one giant booby trap. It's no wonder Williams never caught his footing in the NFL. As brutal as this mistake was, another running back got scammed so badly, it cost him the price of over 100 Ferraris. Wow, that's almost unforgivable. However, that's exactly what happened to Darren McFadden. As it turns out, McFadden was talking to his business partner one day when the two agreed to invest $3 million of McFadden's savings into Bitcoin. Sadly, that's not exactly what happened, because the business partner took the money and ran. Losing $3 million alone is devastating, but what's more devastating is the amount that Bitcoin became worth. At the time when McFadden sued his business partner, one Bitcoin was only worth approximately $790. But now, a single Bitcoin is worth around $40,000. Forget playing on an NFL team, McFadden could have almost bought an NFL team with that type of money. Ironically, Dan Marino has his own problems, but for a totally different reason. While McFadden would have been crazy rich if the Bitcoin transaction went through, Marino lost heaps of money with an investment of his own. However, it didn't seem that way at first. In fact, Digital Domain Media Company, the company that Marino invested almost $15 million in, started off by thriving. While the Digital Domain Media mostly did special effects for blockbusters, they rose to a new high of $9.20 a share after creating a hologram of Tupac Shakur. Unfortunately, the company soon came crashing back down in 2002 by going bust and dropping to only 55 cents a share. So instead of making a fortune, Marino went from $14.5 million to only $800,000. I bet Marino wishes he could have gotten out sooner. Speaking of regrets, Terrell Brown also has a major regret because in 2013, the cornerback made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Most NFL players can agree that they aren't the biggest fan of off-season workouts, but that was especially true of Terrell Brown because he didn't even bother showing up. Unsurprisingly, skipping off-season workouts did not work out well for Brown. So much so that he was charged $2 million by the 49ers. That has to be one of the silliest ways to lose $2 million. Ultimately, an upset Brown blamed his agent for not informing him the workouts were mandatory. But let's be real. How on earth did Brown not see the fine coming? It's his job to play football, for crying out loud. But your job is to click this video on the screen. These are the biggest hits in NFL history.